Hello and welcome to Synergy 2024. All right. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about operational reporting and key performance indicators, or KPIs. Exciting stuff. I'll start with a bit of an introduction. That's me. My name is David. I'm a solutions consultant at Thomson Reuters. I started my career with Thomson Reuters just over a decade ago, doing technical support for our tax product, DT Max. And this is kind of where I cut my teeth in the industry. I spent a few tax seasons helping clients out, troubleshooting some of their technical issues. Then I jumped over to the sales team where I advised clients on our product offerings. And then after a few years, I ended up leaving Thomson Reuters to join a small boutique tax and accounting firm startup where I was responsible for business development, sales marketing, and I did some IT consulting. And then fast forward to 2019, that's where I rejoined Thomson Reuters for my current role, where I advise clients on our offerings, help them get the most out of our tools, and help them grow and scale their business. All right, so with that introduction out of the way, what are we going to cover today? So with regards to the objective, today I'm really going to try and make the case that you should be making use of reporting and KPIs at your firm. That's going to be the topic for today. Let's take a look at the agenda. So sort of the nuts and bolts of what we're going to be discussing today. We're going to get into some definitions. So really the, what question. So what are operational reports and KPIs? Then we're going to jump over to the why. Why should we be using reports, data, and KPIs at your firm? I'm going to talk about some strategies, practically how we can go ahead and implement reporting at your firm. Afterwards, I'm going to cover some of the obstacles and bottlenecks that firm owners might encounter when they're implementing reporting and KPIs at their firm. And then finally, we're going to take a look at some examples. So we're going to take a look at some interesting or common operational reports that a lot of firms are using. And we'll do the same thing on the key performance indicator side as well. So that's sort of what we're got on tap for today. All right, introduction to operational reports and KPIs. It's going to be pretty challenging for me to make the case that you should adopt operational reporting and KPIs if we don't have a common understanding of what I'm talking about. So these might seem like some pretty important fancy words. You might also be asking yourself, hey, you know what? Sounds cool. What is Dave talking about? So let's cover some definitions about reports and KPIs. So what do I mean when I'm talking about operational reports? We can kind of think of these as detailed summaries that will provide insights into the day-to-day operations of your firm. Now, these reports will help firms monitor, manage, and improve some of their internal processes, efficiencies, and productivity. Operational reports typically focus on specific aspects of the firm's operations. And I have a couple of examples we'll go over. So we might have reports that focus on workflow management, right? So maybe things like tracking the status of client projects, where are we at with any given project. We can have reports that look at deadlines. We might have reports that look at resource allocation, that kind of thing. We might have reports that are specific to time and expense tracking. So in these reports, we could look at things like staff utilization rates. Might seem a little esoteric, but we're going to double click on what that looks like in a few minutes. We might have reports that focus on billable hours, expense management, that sort of thing. We could have reports that speak to client management. So we're doing things like tracking client interactions, service delivery, customer satisfaction. And then we can have reports that look at financial performance. So here we're analyzing revenue, profitability, cash flow, that sort of thing. So operational reports are often generated on a regular schedule, could be weekly, monthly, quarterly, and they're used to inform tactical decisions. They're used to identify areas for improvement and will help optimize firm operations. Okay, so hopefully so far so good. We can now jump over to KPIs, key performance indicators. And here we're talking about quantifiable metrics that are going to measure an accounting firm's performance against specific goals, objectives, and targets. So KPIs are going to provide a snapshot of the firm's overall performance, highlighting areas of strengths and weaknesses. And I have a couple of broad categories here as well. So we might have financial KPIs. That's going to look at things like revenue growth rate, maybe things like ARPU, right? So average revenue per user. These could be some interesting KPIs to look at. We could have KPIs that are centered around productivity. Here we'll look at things like utilization rate, essentially the billable hours versus total number of hours. Again, we'll look at that in greater detail in a bit. We'll look at staff productivity, example, the tasks completed per hour, project completion rate. Then we might have KPIs that focus on clients and client engagement. So maybe we have things like client satisfaction rating. You might have heard the term, the NPS score or the net promoter score. We can have KPIs that take a look at client retention rate, right? How many clients are you keeping over the long term of your firm? We could have efficiency KPIs, right? We might want to track and measure the cycle time, or in other words, the time to complete a task or a project. So these are all various types of examples of key performance indicators. Now, KPIs are typically displayed on dashboards, and they're going to provide a quick and easy way to track performance and make data-driven decisions. Now, by setting targets and tracking KPIs, an accounting firm can focus on improving specific aspects of its operations, driving growth, and enhancing competitiveness. Okay, so hopefully that helped sort of provide some context, some definitions when it comes to operational reports and KPIs. All right. Got it. Why should I care? So this brings us to the why, right? We covered the what they are. Now let's take a look at the why part. Okay, so why should you care about reporting and KPIs? Totally a fair question. The answer I would say is pretty simple. There's this expression you might have heard, if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. What do we mean by that? Well, I would ask the question, what are we looking to improve? How do we know what needs to be improved? How much should we improve it by? These types of questions are why reporting is so important. So the reports are going to present you with data about your firm. And then once you have access to that data, then you can make data-driven decisions rather than decisions driven by intuition or kind of that gut feeling, right? This is something that a lot of firms do. And if you do, that's okay. No judgment. But here's why you might not want to do that. And I'll use kind of a hyperbolic analogy. So imagine you're about to board a flight, and before you board, it was announced that the pilot wasn't a big fan of using his instruments and dashboards to make decisions. The pilot preferred to rely on gut feeling and intuition. No problem, right? They could always take a peek out the window, and if they saw the plane was flying a little bit too low, they would just adjust, make it go up a little bit more. The fuel gauge, who needs that, right? The pilot's pretty sure they filled up before takeoff. Okay. I don't know about you, but I would be running, not walking away from that flight. Now, the same principle can be applied to your accounting firm as well, albeit, granted, the stakes in this case are going to be considerably lower. That was somewhat of an outrageous metaphor. But the point I'm trying to make is that reporting and KPIs, they give us something concrete and quantifiable to reference. So we can look at the data, and the caveat being, it's accurate. We might see the equivalent of that flashing red light telling us something is seriously amiss. Once we recognize it, now we can address it. Now we're making informed decisions about important variables, such as resource and capital allocation, staffing, that sort of thing. And so this is how reporting and KPIs lead to that improved decision making. Another benefit of using reporting and KPIs is that it's going to drive greater efficiency. And after all, who wouldn't want to be more efficient, right? By tracking KPIs, the firm can identify areas of inefficiency and then implement processes for improvement, reducing waste and increasing productivity. What do I mean by that? I'll give you a quick example here. So let's say we run a report, and in this report, well, we're looking at the effectiveness of our staff. And in this particular report, we're seeing how much a given staff member is writing up and writing down jobs. Okay, so now we quickly see that one staff in particular, we'll call him Gerald, is a total rock star relative to his peers at doing task A. But frankly, he's a bit of a dud when it comes to performing task B. Now, thanks to this report, I'm going to be prompted to have a friendly conversation with Gerald. Might go something like this. Gerald, you are crushing it at task A. Let me ask you, is there something that you're doing that other staff might be able to replicate? Also, I noticed that you're struggling quite a bit with task B. Can we invest in some training to sort of up-level you on task B? Oh, you really don't like doing task B. No problem, that's fine. Let's double down on your strengths and get you doing task A all day. Now, I'm willing to bet Gerald is happy to focus on task A, and that's probably going to improve his job satisfaction. Now Gerald is firing on all cylinders, he loves his job, and he's printing money for us for years to come. Using reporting and KPIs is also going to drive greater client service and customer satisfaction. We'll be able to monitor things like client satisfaction, response time, service quality. And this is really important, super critical, because the clients, after all, are the lifeblood of your firm. And if you have a roster of pretty grumpy clients that are not particularly happy with the service they're getting from you, this could spell problems down the road. So what kind of client service metrics can we analyze here? Well, we can look at things like Net Promoter Score, right? The NPS. And this will measure client satisfaction and loyalty. So if you have that high NPS, that's probably an indication that your customers are generally fairly happy and are going to be more likely to refer your services to potential new customers. We might also look at something like a response time and resolution rate, which will monitor the time taken to respond to client inquiries and the rate at which issues are being resolved. And this could help you identify bottlenecks and improve that response time. Maybe you want to measure client retention rates. And if we look at this data and we see it's a little bit lower than what we would have imagined, we might want to drill down, learn why it's not quite as high as we had originally hoped. And finally, We should also care about reports because it can directly impact our bottom line. So let's talk about revenue growth reports and KPIs. We can measure things like revenue per partner, revenue per employee. We can leverage reports that will give us insights into the margins for specific customers. Hey, here's a fun exercise. Let's run a report that sorts our clients by margins. The ones at the bottom, we might decide, hey, it's been a fun ride, but it's time to refer you to a firm I don't really like that much, CPA down the street. The clients at the top of that report, the bread and butter customers, fruit baskets for them next Christmas. Here's another idea to use reporting and KPIs to improve our bottom line. Maybe we run a report that monitors utilization rates, where we look at the ratio of billable hours to total hours. We set up a KPI and we establish a new target. So if we see that on average, 70% of all hours worked are billable, we might want to come up with an incentive to bring that up to 75%. Over the years, we slowly raise that bar, and now we're a lot more profitable. One final example. You can set up a CRM to track sales opportunities and then run a report to forecast future revenue growth. At one point in time, we see that our pipeline, it's looking a little dry, it's looking a little lean. So once again, data-driven decisions are dictating that, hey, we take action, allocate some resources now to business development. Let's do some ad spend, or iron our favorite shirt, grab a beverage, and chat it up with some future customers at that next networking event. So to sum up why you should care about reporting on KPIs, the data will allow you to optimize decisions and strategy. It'll drive increased efficiency. It'll improve client service, and it'll generate revenue growth. That's pretty sweet if you ask me. Now, hopefully at this point, you're thinking to yourself, Dave, you're making some pretty compelling points here. I think I'm sold. Now what? How do I go about using reporting and KPIs at my firm? What do I need to do? Well, you're on your own. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I'm kidding. I've got your back. Let's talk about what's needed to implement some changes. All right, so first, you're going to need to roll up your sleeves, grab some tools, and get ready for work. Let's start with the tool portion. So one of the best tools that we can use is going to be a practice management solution. Now, for those of you that might be unfamiliar with a practice management solution, it can seem a little bit intimidating, but I'll try and break it down for you. Essentially, it's going to be a software application that will provide you with all the features that you need to manage your firm. So they'll typically allow you to track all your projects. And as a sidebar, the projects, they're basically the services that you offer at your firm. So think tax, bookkeeping, payroll, that sort of thing. They'll track time against those projects. With a practice management tool, you'll be able to generate invoices, and you'll also be able to record payments. Now, by interfacing with this type of a platform and entering in all this rich data, well, you're going to be able to use that data to generate reports to then quantify the performance of your firm. Now, I think it's going to be a little bit easier for me to show you rather than just tell you. So with that being said, let's see one in action. Now, fortunately, your trusted software partner, Thomson Reuters, has a couple of options when it comes to practice management solutions. We have our desktop solution, DT Practice, which is an incredibly robust and good solution for those that really want to customize their practice management experience. But today, for this example, I'm actually going to be using Onvio, which is a cloud-based practice management tool. Let's see how it works. All right, I went ahead and fired up my trusty Onvio, and right away, I'm going to get some insights. So here I'm at the firm dashboard, and I can get some insights on the topic of time and billing. So here I can see my work in progress recap for the month. I can see my accounts receivables recap for the month. We can see some key revenue totals, all that good stuff. Over here, I'm actually going to skip the document management portion. While it's super useful for managing all the client documents and it includes electronic signature capabilities and portals and all that good stuff, it's not necessarily going to be relevant to our topic today, discussing, data reporting KPIs. So we're going to jump over to projects over here. And the projects, as I mentioned earlier, it's just the services that you offer to your clients. So what I'm looking at here is going to be a list of all of my open projects at the firm. Now, this layout can be customized with Onvio. At a minimum for me, I want to know, hey, who's the client? What kind of work are we doing? So it's the name of the job. What's the status of the project? Who is responsible for completing the project? And most critically, when do I have to have this project completed by? And then we can add more columns as we wish. Now, what's going to be super useful in this case is how we query this data, how we make sense of all this, because this can be pretty overwhelming, right? So what we can do is we can go ahead and filter this list of projects. Give you an example. Onvio, you know what? Show me all of my bookkeeping projects. Okay, it's going to filter out everything else at the firm. Let's be a little bit more specific. So show me my bookkeeping projects that are assigned specifically to me. Okay, now it's going to filter out everything else. Show me the bookkeeping projects that are assigned to me that haven't been started yet. All right. Or similar idea, you know what, just show me all of the projects that are assigned to me, regardless of what they might are, and I want to know the ones that are due this week. Amazing. I have none. I can take the rest of the week off. Very exciting. Okay. So the reason I mention this is because, yes, it's amazing for tracking the projects, but when it comes to using this to access data, we're going to want to go ahead and track time against these projects. So I'm going to go over here to the time and expense portion of Onvio, and let's go ahead and enter some time. So I'm going to select from my list of victims here. Sure, we'll work on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 Inc. And today we're going to do some corporate tax. And specifically, it's going to be some research. Now we'll do some tax preparation here. And we're going to work really hard today. We're going to do a full 8 hours of tax preparation for this client. Just like that, we've gone ahead and recorded these billable hours into my Onvio system. If I wanted to, I could also record expenses, and then we can generate reports to monitor some of these expenses as well. Expenses could be things that you want to invoice your customer, like software subscriptions or mileage, that sort of thing. But yeah, we've gone ahead, we entered in some time, so let's go ahead and generate an invoice. So I'm going to come over to billing, and irrespective of how we might prefer to bill, whether that's, by the hour or fixed value pricing, or we want a retainer, Onvio's got you covered. It'll be able to accommodate all those billing methodologies. So let's go ahead and prepare a bill. So I'm going to choose this client here with some WIP built up, and I'm going to actually select detailed bill so that I can kind of massage the details of this invoice a little bit. Okay, so now I can choose from a variety of different invoice formats. I'm going to bill by project in this case. And I'm going to take my time entries associated with this customer and add them to my invoice. All right, fantastic. And we can go ahead and we can adjust the amount. Maybe 1200 is a little bit ambitious, so I'm going to write it down a little bit, which is not ideal, but it happens sometimes. And again, because we're entering this into the system, we're going to be able to generate reports to monitor, how much we're writing things up and writing them down. We can modify the text of the invoice a little bit. If we're feeling, very charitable, maybe we'll offer a discount. Yeah, and then after that, we can preview the invoice. We'll have various, invoice templates and formats to choose from. Looks good, looks good. Okay. Now here's the really exciting part. Our client is going to pay us. Amazing. So we're going to go ahead and record a payment. It'd be good if I saved this first. Okay. Let's go ahead and record a payment. Fantastic. So we're going to reference the aforementioned client here. And how did they pay us? Did they pay us a big brown envelope full of cash? Did they send us Bitcoin? I don't know. Maybe in this case, it was a check. There we go. And we can see the AR balance for this client is $900. So they're going to settle up with us. And we're good to go. Good stuff. So now, as it's kind of a long way of saying that, we're entering all kinds of data into the system. Now for the fun part, right? So we're going to go ahead here and click on Firm Reports. And what we'll see here is going to be a library of different reports. Again, the premise of the reporting is to provide you with information about your firm. We have all kinds of different report types. In fact, I can sort them by the different report types over here. And we're going to have reports that are focused on time and expense, reconciliation, projects, firm collections, etc. So let's see how we can use a practice management tool to quickly run a report. Maybe I want to do some kind of a production analysis. So if I refer back to my PowerPoint, we're going to need the technology tools. Practice management tools is but one type of technology tool we can use. There are various others that we can also use to generate reporting and KPIs. But then my second point here on the slide, we need a process for setting up reports. I'm going to talk about that in greater detail in a moment, but let's go back to our Onvio for a second. And we're going to edit the parameters of this report. So here we want to do a month to date production analysis. We're going to detail it by client and then group it by staff. That seems about right to me. Let's go ahead and run this report now. Okay, so what am I looking at here? I'm just going to slide this down over here. So we can see for my roster of clients, I have all the customers that I've worked on, and we can see, how many hours I've billed for these various clients. We can see total. We can see what type of hours what were the nature of these types of hours that I've inputted. Were they billable? Were they non-billable? Were they admin? Then we can do things like see our utilization rate, which I'll discuss later. We can see the cost associated with with working on these clients. We can calculate the margins. I don't want to get too deep into the weeds. We're going to look at some specific reports in a little bit, but I just wanted to focus your attention on the fact that we can use a practice management tool to input all kinds of data and then use that data, extract that data to generate reports and KPIs. All right, referring back to my slides, we just saw, when we're speaking about practical strategies for implementing reporting and KPIs, it's going to be important to have the correct tools in place, right? The software that will enable us to run reports and measure KPIs. You're also going to want to have a process for setting up reports. And so what I mean by that is you're going to want to establish what are the areas of the business that we want to measure so that we can improve them. And then we're going to want to build out reports so we can track against those metrics. So if, for instance, you want to improve the efficiency of your staff, there's various reports that we can build. And then by virtue of inputting data into our practice management system, we can build out reports and we can analyze the efficiency of the staff. And then we might also be able to highlight some practical steps we can take to improve that efficiency. And then lastly, but not leastly, I put here accurate data. As the old expression goes, right? Garbage in, well, garbage out. You're going to want to establish regular controls and audits and cross-validations to maintain that data quality, that data integrity. I think it's really important to stress the importance of good data hygiene with your staff. You can let them know that we're going to be using these reports when it comes to potential compensation. So hopefully that'll incentivize them to take data hygiene seriously. So far today, I've talked about what is reporting, why it's important, how we can practically go about implementing reporting and KPIs. And I'm here to tell you that it's going to be a cakewalk and there's going to be zero challenges. Well, I wish that were the case, but if I'm being serious, you may encounter some obstacles when it comes to implementation. So maybe what we can do at this point is we can identify them so that we're better equipped to deal with these bottlenecks head on. I would say the number one concern I hear from firm owners when it comes to implementation is they're concerned about the staff. They're worried about staff resistance, staff pushback, and I think that's a totally valid concern. Let's talk about how we can mitigate some of those obstacles surrounding the staff. I recommend that you communicate the purpose and the benefits of reporting and KPIs. Let them know why they're necessary and how it's going to benefit not only the organization, but also the individual. Highlight how it's going to help them make better decisions, how it's going to improve their work, and how it's going to contribute to the firm's growth. I would also involve the staff in the process. So engage with staff members to understand their concerns, gather feedback, and incorporate their ideas into the implementation plan. This is going to help them feel invested in the process and more likely to accept the changes. I would also lead by example. So demonstrate your commitment to reporting KPIs by using them yourself and then sharing your own performance metrics with the team. This will help set the tone and encourage others to follow in your footsteps. We also hear some concerns when it comes to system integration challenges, right? So we're integrating different systems such as accounting, software, CRMs, other tools. This can be complex and time-consuming. And I'm not sure there's any real way around that. I would just say, you're going to have to be patient. You're going to have to be persistent. I think if we're being real, we're going to be facing some short-term pain for some long-term gain. At the end of the day, I'm convinced that the juice is going to be worth the squeeze. And then lastly, but not leastly, we're going to be contending with data overload. So, when you're increasing the amounts of data available, it can be overwhelming to determine which data to focus on and how do we present that data in a meaningful way. It can also be a challenge to define the relevant KPIs. So identifying the most relevant and meaningful KPIs for the firm can be a challenge, especially if there's a lack of understanding about what metrics are most important for driving business decisions at your firm. And to sort of remedy or mitigate that challenge, I recommend speaking to others that have had success in implementing reporting KPIs. You might want to speak to other firm owners that are willing to share their success and strategies with your firm. And there are other resources to help you out as well. At Thomson Reuters, we have training and implementation consultants. I'll be more than happy to sit down with you, sort of audit the different things that you want to track and build reports with, and they'll be able to share a lot of best practices with you. At the end of the day, I don't think it's worth reinventing the wheel on your own. It's better to learn from other people's mistakes than learn from your own mistakes, and we'll be able to assist you on your journey. Okay, so I've titled this slide, Show Me Some Cool Ones. Now, a lot of what I've been speaking about so far today has been largely theoretical. At this juncture, I want to shift more towards the practical. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to log into Onvio. As you'll recall, that's going to be our practice management solution. And we're going to look at some real-world examples of reports that we're going to run. And then we're going to take a little bit of time to analyze and unpack those reports. And I think this is where it's going to get really exciting. I'm going to walk that word back a little bit. Exciting might be a strong word, but at the very minimum, they should be insightful, right? So we're going to generate this data, we're going to analyze this data, and that data will hopefully drive us to make smart decisions to improve the performance of our firm. All right, I'm going to stop talking. Let's jump in. All right, so now I'm logged into my Onvio account, and I have this fictitious tax and accounting firm, and we're going to run some reports. So in my make-believe firm, I have a couple of staff, and we're inputting data into the system, right? So we're logging in our hours, etc. And now I'm going to run what's called production analysis. And with this production analysis, we're going to be able to determine our utilization rates for our staff and then collectively as a firm. Sounds amazing. What is a utilization rate? It's simply a ratio that we're going to take a look at. So when we're logging in our hours, we're going to be coding them as either billable, non-billable, or administrative. And the utilization rate is simply a ratio that we want to get as high as possible. When utilization number becomes big, then money becomes big, to put it eloquently. Let's go ahead and run this report. I'm just going to actually format it a little bit, and we're going to run it for the month of October. And so we'll probably want to run this report on a fairly regular basis, maybe once a month. And I'm going to detail it by client and then group it by staff. The formatting that I'm talking about will make more sense when I present the report. So let's go ahead and run that report. So production analysis. Here we go. Okay, so we've grouped it by staff here. And again, in my firm, I got 3 different staff members, myself, Paula Doucette, and Salim. And under each heading, we have the clients that each staff member has worked on. And so we can see how these hours are broken down, right? So we have billable, non-billable, and billable. And then we can get a percentage here, or what we call a utilization rate. And so we can see it on an individual client basis, right? So for example, I don't know how reflective of reality this might be, but a lot of my clients here are 100% billable hours. Again, probably not that realistic. I also have 20 hours of administrative hours. And so this might be for things like training or networking, basically other activities that we perform at the firm that don't have a billable basis attached to them. And then I guess my productivity on this particular client dipped a little bit. It's only at 95.97%. And if we average that against all the hours I've worked, well, we can quickly see here that my utilization rate is going to be 87.31%. And we can do the same exercise for the other staff at the firm. We can see here Paula's sitting at 75.9%, and Salim is dragging us all down. He's only at 71.15. And then we can actually get an average of the 3 employees at 81.93. Okay. Why is this important? Again, it quantifies the performance of our firm. Imagine if I said, okay, gang, at the firm, hey, you know what? Let's be more productive and more profitable? Everyone would probably be like, okay, sure. But now, using the data, we can quantify it. We can run this report on a regular basis, and we can set benchmarks, and we can establish aspirational utilization rates. So we can talk to our staff, hey, we're going to run this report every month. And maybe you set that baseline and you see at your firm that you're sitting at, call it 70% utilization rate. And you say, okay, you know what, let's try and incrementally improve that over time. Maybe you provide incentives, right? Because I think it was the late Charlie Munger that said, show me the incentive, I'll show you the behavior. So you can tell your staff that we're going to run this report every month, and whoever has the lowest utilization rate is going to be terminated. Probably don't want to run with that one. I'm kind of kidding. Maybe it's a $10 Tim Hortons gift card, or maybe, it's more substantial. Probably should be. And so you can imagine that if you're able to, without investing in anything else, without changing much else, just sort of drive the behavior that you want to see, and you can quantify it, now we can see that, hey, our accounting firm, again, everything else being equal, as we increase our utilization rate, now we're more profitable. That's pretty sweet. All right, let's run a different report. So for this example, we're going to do a billing analysis. And again, I'm going to just look at the formatting here. So we're going to do it for the month of October, detail it by client, group by staff. Perfect. And with this billing analysis, we're going to be able to calculate a realization rate here. What does that mean? Okay, so here I can see, again, grouped by staff, I can see how many hours I've worked for each of these clients. I can see how much I've billed and then how much I've adjusted. And based on those numbers, I can come up with the realization rate. So if we look at this first client here, I've actually billed $1,000 above what the produced amount was. And as a consequence, my realization rate is going to be above 100%. I'm actually getting 108% of what I've produced. The following case, it looks like I had to mark it down a little bit. And then we can see a average or a total amount down here for my clients. And again, this is something that we can measure. This is something that we can communicate to our staff. We can establish baselines and then set benchmarks and say, over time, we want to make sure that that realization rate is trending up and to the right over time. We have access to more information in this report as well. So here I can see what the direct costs for these hour inputs are for all of my clients, for my different staff. What we're going to do is we can input what the cost of our staff are into the system. And so for myself, the costs are fairly high, and that's because I'm very capable and a very good salary negotiator. Okay, I don't know how close to real life that is. But we can, based on the cost, now we can calculate the margins for our clients. And now I can see the total margins for myself for the month of October. And we can do the same for our other colleagues. My costs are high, but we can see by the total number of hours I've worked, it's orders of magnitude actually higher than my colleagues. That's probably fairly reflective of reality. Again, I'm kidding. But again, that provides us some interesting insights for our firm. I maybe want to take this kind of report and then sort by our clients by the margin, right? So again, those clients at the top, let's really, pull out all the stops to retain those customers. And then the ones that are near or at the bottom, odds are, we're not making very much, if any, money at all from these guys. There's a decent probability that they're probably not the most fun to work with, so we might decide to relieve ourselves of those customers. Again, these are the sorts of insights that we can derive from these types of quantitative reports that we're running on a regular basis at the firm. You guys have been an amazing audience. I'm going to spoil you guys with one last example. We're going to run a project budget to actual report at this point. So in this example, we are going to run it for, again, October. And this time we're going to detail it not by client, but by project, and then group it by staff. And so this report is going to look at what the number of hours that were budgeted for any given project, and then tell us how many hours it actually took to complete that project. All right. Fantastic. So what are we looking at here? Okay, so again, these are the projects that David, worked on. This is sort of how much we had budgeted in terms of number of hours to complete that project. And then depending on how long it actually took, we're going to be able to see a variance. And I'm actually seeing a bit of an anomaly here in that apparently there was a corporate tax return that we estimated would take 7 hours. I actually did it in 0 hours. I don't know how realistic that is. I know our DT Max is pretty fast at producing tax returns, but I think it'll take more than 0 hours to produce a T2. So maybe we'll look at another example. Here we can see, oh, this is a bit of a problem, right? So it should have taken 6 hours, but in actuality, it took 11 hours with a 5-hour variance here. This is kind of good to know. But again, how does it help our firm? So let's imagine this hypothetical scenario. We've established the desirable number of hours it takes to complete any given project. And then in real time, as we're logging in the hours, perhaps a staff manager or a partner will get a notification as the number of hours gets close to or starts to exceed that budget. Okay, so rather than running these reports or not running any reports and having no idea what we're dealing with, or only understanding that it went way over budget, in hindsight, as we're creeping closer to the budgeted amount of time, again, maybe you get those notifications, maybe you have loud sirens blaring in your office, we can be proactive. And so we might want to ping David and say, hey, listen, right now, I set up a notification that if you're 10% above the budgeted hours, we got to start having a little chat. And then, we can kind of drill down and find out what's going on. Again, is there something a bit anomalous with this particular project or client? Do we have scope creep? This, again, gives us the tools. It gives us the data to dig in a little bit and find out what's going on, and it helps us be proactive so we're not just, eating our shirt after the fact. All right, well, that's all the time I have here with you today. I have a couple of closing thoughts that I want to share when it comes to setting up reports and KPIs. This is really what I would say is probably the single biggest variable when it comes to separating the highly profitable firms from the rest that are out there. So I really hope that I convinced you that you should be taking a more quantitative approach to managing your firm. Again, if you can't measure it, it's going to be extremely hard to improve it. That being said, I fully realize that implementing reporting and KPIs is much easier said than done. But remember, you're not alone here. At Thomson Reuters, we not only have the tools on hand to help you achieve success, but we also possess the know-how. We have a deep roster of implementation consultants that can partner with you. They'll audit your processes, share best practices, help you determine what metrics you want to measure against, and then help build reports to facilitate the benchmarking of those metrics. You'd be amazed how much you can increase your bottom line, improve efficiencies, and delight your customers by making the correct or optimal decisions based on the data presented. Again, my name is David Carroll. I want to thank you so much for your time today. You'll find my contact information below. Please reach out to me if you have any questions. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of Synergy 2024. Thanks again, everyone. Talk soon.